Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. We're playing a little catch-up here on the Cinema Sit Down, because there were some movies that I wanted to review back in 2023 that I only did immediate reactions to and didn't get a chance to review, and I would have reviewed them before the end of 2023, but I got COVID. And then we just talked about Poor Things. All of that stuff takes place in the last video that we did. If you want to understand and know more about all those things and why I'm sounding the way I sound and doing the things that I'm doing, check out the video right up there for my Poor Things review. But now I want to turn my attention to, I think, the only movie that makes sense to talk about after talking about Poor Things. I technically saw this one first, but they're both very sexually driven and both way out there and both have some big swings being taken by their directors. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into Saltburn, and of course, talking about the lovely, talented Emerald Fennell. God, I love this woman. Promising Young Woman was one of my favorite, if not my favorite movie the year that one came out. And right away I was like, oh, here we go. I get really excited when we get first directorial features that pack a punch in the way that Promising Young Woman did, where I was like, this Emerald Fennell woman, pay attention. Things that she does are going to be, at worst, just divisive. At best, brilliant. You know what I mean? And coming off of someone like Yorgos Lanthimos, who's willing to take some big swings, tell some zany stories. Talking about Emerald Fennell's second directorial feature in Saltburn seemed like the only logical move. And look, I don't think, well, it depends on the perspective you're looking for. I read an article where someone was like, what is Saltburn trying to say? And if I'm being honest, I don't necessarily think that Saltburn's trying to say anything too crazy. I think Fennell was inspired by a movie. I won't say it here because I'm talking to one of my buddies. When he heard that, he's like, well, it could be a little giveaway about certain things. And I think it functions in a different way than the movie that, like, one of the things that was a source of inspiration for Fennell. But it was like one of these vibes where it's like, you heard that, and she went out and made a psychological thriller. And I think she just wanted to make a good psychological thriller. The movie certainly has some things to say about the elites in the world and the world in which the elites come from. Because our main character, Oliver Quick, is not an elite. And he kind of finds his way into a group of people that have somebody who comes from one of those places. And in befriending Jacob Elordi's Felix, Oliver gets invited to Saltburn, the name of his home. Like that tells you all you need to know about the type of elite you're dealing with here. Their home has its own name. You know what I mean? It takes them out to Saltburn for a whole summer, and then things just progress from there. And in the time that Oliver spends, yeah, I think Fennell has some things to say about those types of people. But outside of that, I think Fennell just wanted to play with those types of people and how she plays with those types of people and the story that she gives Oliver Quick, because she's also our writer here as well as director. All of it was just fascinating and was so fun. Like, I walked out of the movie, and in my immediate reaction, I said, this is the horniest movie I can remember watching since, like, Cruel Intentions. It had that kind of horny feeling where it was like you're watching this going, like, as a kid back then, I was like, are we allowed to watch things like this in a movie theater? And Fennell certainly goes that route. Like, this movie is super horny, and the horny places she goes had me going, are we allowed to watch things like this on a movie in the movie theater? Which, again, like I said in Poor Things, sex, nudity, none of that do I ever have an issue with if it serves a purpose. And the eroticism and the sex, and there is, spoilers, there's some nudity in here as well. All of it plays an important role in what's going on in Oliver's story and how those things are used in the movie and used in the source of telling the story, brings on some really interesting things and creates some really interesting stuff for that lead character of Oliver. And I personally loved watching where Fennell wanted to take Oliver as a character and where she ends up ultimately taking this story. And one of the things that I love the most about Fennell, like I said, she's willing to take really big swings, and she can hit you with a left uppercut that you don't see coming, right? Like, you might be looking at the right, but here comes the left. And it's one of those where this movie does not quite hit in that way, the way Promising Young Woman did, where, like, I didn't see anything coming. Some of this stuff, and I was talking to my therapist about this yesterday. One of the things me and my therapist do is talk about movies. And, you know, she kind of said, like, it got a little predictable down the end of the movie. And I was like, yeah, you know, when you're seeing where the story is going, there are things in the story that you can kind of see coming. However, the thing I appreciated most about Fennell on the writing side, when it came to those things, is anytime you got to one of those moments where you're like, I bet this is going to happen, there were 2 or 3 other things that could have happened as well. And that layer or 2 of doubt never made me feel like I fully knew exactly what was coming. And she still hits you with a left uppercut. You know what I mean? Like, you get hit with a piece at the end where you're like, damn! You know what I mean? And I love a script that can do that. Then when you talk about what Fennell's doing behind the camera, I love the way, much like I was talking with Yorgos, I love someone who can visually tell a story in a fascinating way. And what's cool here is, like, Poor Things ended up being an absolutely gorgeous looking movie. Fennell brings Saltburn in a very similar way. I love how she visually tells a story, and here this movie is also extremely beautiful, but also kind of grimy and dirty. You know what I mean? And the way she shoots, like, one, the subject matter that you have, the only thing I knew about this movie going in, I think Variety had interviewed Fennell and read her a letterboxed review from somebody that said, Saltburn, along these lines, Saltburn is essentially a movie about how Jacob Elordi is so hot he will drive people insane. And I thought that was all I needed to know going in. And it's a good, that I think is the only piece you really need to know going in. But, like, she is working with beautiful people, beautiful places, and all of that makes the movie very beautiful. But there is a layer of grime in there where she's able to take this thing into places I never saw coming. Places and things I never thought I would ever see in a movie, and probably will never see in a movie again. And what I really love is some of the subject matter. Like I said, it's dirty, it's grimy. Some of what is shown on screen is dirty and grimy. Yet, as uncomfortable as some of the scenarios and situations are that Fennell gives you, the way she shoots these things, some of these weird-ass things were the hottest things I've ever seen in a movie, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, the eroticism at certain times in this movie can be overpoweringly uncomfortable with what you're watching. But at the same time, it pulls you in a way where you're just like, I am so intrigued by everything, and just like, it's how she shoots it. Like, you feel that eroticism, and it's something that I think is much like having nudity or sex in a movie. If you want people to feel that way and it serves a purpose, I'm here for it. And the eroticism in this movie and the things that make you feel like, am I okay with this, are things that drive this movie forward and drive this story forward. And how she utilizes sex and these erotic sequences and how she puts them on screen really, for me, did amplify the story she's telling, which I think is a really, really good psychological thriller that only works when you have a cast like this one. And much like Poor Things, which brought in, like, Oscar vets and big-time names, right? Here, you got a couple of those. I mean, a Rosmund Pike, a Richard E. Grant. You got some solid vets in here. But this is a mostly younger, up-and-coming kind of cast. You know, people like Jacob Elordi. People like Archie Madekwe. What a great year Archie Madekwe had in 2023 with 2 roles, man. Gran Turismo to Saltburn, so drastically different. It really gives you an idea of that kid's range. But, you know, like, these younger folks, Sadie Soverall, you know, are the ones that litter the screen and give you stuff that you didn't see coming. And really going into the movie, while I am certainly familiar with Elordi and Madekwe, the guy who's got, like, the most under his belt is our lead, Barry Keoghan. Keoghan. I love this dude. Every time I see Barry Keoghan pop up in anything, I'm like, what we got going on over here? And that started with a Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Killing of a Sacred Deer. Barry Keoghan's character in that movie, one of the most fascinating characters ever. And like, it just pulled me into this dude's catalog and where it's like, he's always someone I'm looking out for. And here, I never saw this movie coming for Barry Keoghan. Holy cow, man. And again, much like Emma Stone, and maybe this is just something where it's like when you work with Yorgos, you have to fully commit to things, something that he did in Killing of the Sacred Deer. And this translates where it's like, yeah, this is going to be a guy that will fully commit to anything you ask him to do. And there are some things in this movie that Barry Keoghan is asked to do in this movie that are, like, I never, ever could have seen happening in a movie ever in my life. And if you don't get the commitment that you get from Keoghan, this movie can't work. And everything that he does with Oliver works perfectly in what Emerald Fennell wants on screen and the vision that she's trying to give us. And movies like this can only work when you have a lead that can mesh with their director and commit the way that Keoghan does. Like, Oliver, on paper, might seem like a pretty straightforward character, but the thing that I love most about Oliver is that he's not. Oliver's got lots of layers to him. And as Keoghan peels those layers back for us as we move through the movie, you just are more and more intrigued and wondering what it is that he wants, you know, out of the things that are happening, and what are his true driving motivations. What's he really trying to get at? And watching him navigate all of these different things that go on at Saltburn and be willing to do some of the wild things that happen in this movie, it's really the only thing that really makes it work as well as it does. And Keoghan here is absolutely phenomenal. We mentioned Rosmund Pike. She's another one where, like, everything she does, I'm just so impressed by her all the time. And, you know, Elsbeth Catton, Felix's mom, it's not a huge role, but man, does she take advantage of all the screen time that she is given, and she makes such a lasting impression. Like, Elsbeth Catton is a fascinating character, and you don't get the people that you get at Saltburn and functioning the way that these people function without Elsbeth. I loved what Pike gave you. Richard E. Grant, the other vet on this acting squad, plays Sir James Catton, the guy who's the dad here. He's a little bit off his rocker, maybe going down some pathways that aren't, you know, all together there, and that stuff suits Grant so perfectly. He's great, and the combo of him and Pike are such a fascinating couple. Like, you're sitting there and you're going, like, in that way, I think those are some of the things, like, you see, you know, Fennell playing with and poking at when it comes to the elites. But the two of them together make such an interesting, you know, head of the family. And then you bring in someone like Jacob Elordi, who plays Felix. He's great. And the thing that I think makes him so great is Felix isn't necessarily a bad guy all the time. And Elordi, and it's one of those where it's like, Elordi being cast here really amplifies it because he's so damn good looking. You don't trust him. You know what I mean? And look, I'm familiar with Elordi's performance in Euphoria, and he is one of those, like, good-looking people where it's like you want to trust him, but you can't. And I think he plays with that so perfectly in this movie. Like, it's one of the levels that I don't think is on paper or necessarily put on screen directly, but because it's Elordi, you don't necessarily always buy everything that's going on. I think that's a very, very good thing for the movie. And he's great. Like, I'm very, very enjoyable. And I thought that Elordi gave Felix a lot of depth in his performance, which wasn't something that I was necessarily expecting from him. And that's huge because that relationship between him and Oliver is what makes the movie. And watching Elordi and Keoghan play off of each other, again, we talked about this with Poor Things, great scene partners all over the place in this movie. Another great scene partner, Archie Madekwe. Loved him in this movie. He plays Farleigh Start, who's Felix's cousin, and lives at Saltburn from time to time. But he's the guy who, like, makes decisions that get him in trouble. And he has a very love-hate relationship up at Saltburn. And how he sees things, how he looks at Oliver, like he's the guy who's gonna make fun of Oliver, rip on Oliver. I'm not gonna be Oliver's friend. And that tension between the two of them is so important to the movie, but just the way that Madekwe delivers something that's so drastically different than the kid he plays in Gran Turismo. Like, this is a kid I've never seen on screen before, and now I've seen him twice, and he's fascinating. I just loved everything that he was doing with Farleigh. And then Sadie Soverall, who plays Annabel, Felix's sister. Again, another fascinating character. A really good, almost understated performance from Soverall. Like, she's someone who just nails everything that's asked of her. And yeah, she's kind of the more aloof drunk sister, like the drunk party girl, so to speak. But how that plays into Oliver's story and how Oliver interacts with her, again, another really great scene partner for him, where they bounce off each other in great ways. And they're, like, this movie's got like 4 scenes in it that everyone will talk about, and Soverall is one of those scenes. And again, one of these, like, the feelings that Fennell gets out of you in these sequences are wild, and so much of it is at the hands of what's going on with the actors. And then last but certainly not least for me, actually she's not even listed in like the main IMDb list. I hate IMDb sometimes, but Carey Mulligan pops in here as a wild, crazy, kind of nutso rich friend to the family. She's friends with Rosmund Pike's character, Elsbeth, and I love that Carey Mulligan came in for a small role in this movie, being the lead in Fennell's last. Again, I'm someone who loves seeing directors reuse actors and people that they've worked with before. And, I've said it before. I said it, after Maestro. Every time Carey Mulligan's on screen, you could give her an award. And this little role, in some worlds, in some years, could, if the character had a little bit more than what she was asked, probably could have been nominated for a supporting here. She's brilliant. She leans into all the things that Fennell asks her for. She's asked to do drastically different things than the last time the two of them got together, and she does all of it expertly. And she is a perfect mesh, I think, with Fennell. And when it comes to like the dark comedy and humor that's in here, Fennell utilizes someone like Mulligan perfectly, and I got so happy when she popped up, because they were such a great duo together in Promising Young Woman. But Fennell's whole cast here is great, and I love how everybody plays into this movie. Again, like, Fennell is one of those writer-directors, much like Yorgos, where it's like you have to fully commit to what she's asking for the movie to work. But when you do, what we're given is just brilliance. And last but not least, again, very much like Poor Things, the score here, brilliant, man. Very classical. Gives you this old money vibe, like rich people. But the mixture of what Anthony Willis brings in the score is, again, the thing that just kind of brings it all together, wraps it in a nice bow, and you get a weird, out there movie that's going to make you uncomfortable on purpose. It's going to not make you think about tons of things, but it'll make you think about a couple things. And at the end of the day, you really just sit back, you go on this ride. It's super, super enjoyable, and it takes you to places, again, I didn't know you could go to in a movie. Even if it does have some predictable elements down the back third. Like I said, the counter to that, though, is every one of those moments could break like 3 or 4 different ways, which I thought was really cool. So I really, really, really dug me some Saltburn. So let's see Maniacs up and give Saltburn a score. Emerald Fennell, writer and director here. Absolutely stellar stuff. I love the swings that she takes. I love how bold she is with her decision making, whether that's in the script or whether that's in what she's giving you on screen. And cinematically, this thing is shot wonderfully. It's beautiful things to look at, presented in a very beautiful way, but there's this layer of like uncomfortable ickiness in there too. And how she delivers all of it, how she can make you feel so erotic, but at the same time really disgusted with what's going on. Like, you're like, what? Like, those things are tricks and things that I love from Fennell. And the story here, like I said, is just one that's a fun ride to go on. And what you get from Barry Keoghan as Oliver is what makes the movie work, makes you want to go on that ride. The commitment that you get from Keoghan really sets the bar and sets the pace for everything else that's going on here in the movie and everyone else that's playing with Keoghan in this world, whether it's Jacob Elordi, Archie Madekwe, Sadie Soverall, Richard E. Grant, Rosmund Pike, Carey Mulligan, like anybody who comes to play ball here. The commitment is there, the trust in the director is there, and what you get out of all of those people is absolute excellence. I loved Saltburn. Phenomenal score as well, coming, like I said, from Anthony Willis. It all just meshes and gives you something that I didn't necessarily think I would have seen going into this one, and walked out going, man, Emerald Fennell's 2 for 2, baby. I'm going 4.5 out of 5 C-Maniacs here. This is just another excellent film, another wonderful outing from Emerald Fennell. And again, she's just someone you got to keep your eye on because she's so good. And everybody that's in here, you got to keep your eye on, man. I can't wait to see how this plays come awards time, man. Saltburn is an interesting one. I think Poor Things has that, like, award allure to it. Poor Things doesn't necessarily, but like the things that are in Poor Things are so good, I think there are some people who might be in play. Anyway, we shall see. But what we do know is the Seaman's thoughts. What we don't know are your thoughts, and I want to know what those thoughts are, man. Have you watched Saltburn? It was out in the theaters. I think it might still be out in the theaters, but at the same time, it's also on Amazon Prime right now. So if you've watched it, I've had a bunch of my friends hit me up and be like, dude, you watched the Saltburn movie? I was like, yeah, I watched the Saltburn movie. Did you watch the Saltburn movie? What'd you think? Did you make it all the way through? What'd you think of those 4 scenes? Don't spoil them, but what'd you think? Did they make you feel uncomfortable? Did you walk out of your theater? Did you turn the movie off, or did you power through? And did you come out having an experience that you thought was worthwhile or not? What'd you think of the performances? What'd you think of what Fennell's doing? Where do you find Fennell as a writer-director in general? Anything you got in and around Poor Things, keep it spoiler-free, but put it down below in the comments section. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you're new, want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions, you want to see what my favorite movies of 2023 are, you just dig the vibe, you want to give me a little love and support, well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. It's super easy. All you got to do is jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts, and until next time for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those C-Man goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.